everybody. Welcome to the Healing ALS Sunday Community Meeting. This is now week 9 of 26 weeks, okay? We always get together at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and 9 p.m. Europe, okay, European time. All right, these are to help pals support each other, and these are support webinars, okay? This is for educational purposes. We are not medical professionals, and we're not here giving you medical advice. We're here to support you pals on your journey and let you pals learn from what other pals have done who have reversed it. And this is coming from based on information that we have that we've personally met over 30 ALS reversals, chatted with them at their house and what they did. And we know close to now about 100 that we know about now. We're learning about reversals every day, and there's other ones that are coming up, and people are making progress, okay? Our goal is to have 100 reversals by this group at the end of 2022, and hopefully 200 in total, including past reversals. All right? It's very important that you have a good mindset. Do your own research, okay? And as you're doing your own research, look at the YouTube books and videos. Understand this is 50% physical, 50% mental. Make sure everything resonates with you, okay? Always accept the advice from all of your healthcare professionals, but what you are is the president of your own healing. Make sure that you have the ultimate decision, what resonates with you and what doesn't. This is a slow process. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. But some have reversed right away once that reversal process starts happening. Make sure you have fun while you are healing, okay? We want everyone to be positive so their cells can accept nutrients much better. And Tish, we have a big program, so we're gonna let you go ahead and introduce Coco Newton, who is going to be speaking with us today.
Okay, and actually I'm actually going to do a little bit of information. Julie McDonough will be doing our Q&A today. Julie was diagnosed in 2015, and she is one of our volunteers. Anyone interested in getting more involved, please come on Mondays. We are working on a knowledge base, a new website. We are going to need a couple of hundred people to help us write documents for that. For example, someone is writing a feeding tube document, all the things they wish they had known before they got in their feeding tube. Well, that's important because we have so many people with feeding tubes that have gotten reversed. They don't need their feeding tubes anymore. But boy, if you have to get one, we need to keep you alive until you have time to reverse it. So it's important. Tabitha, thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to Tabitha. She has found 3 reversals in Brazil. Awesome. So we're going to be following up with those. Kudos to Margot, who took 14 steps. It says tool 14 steps. Then she fell back in a wheelchair. But we call that a speed bump. We call that, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. No problem. So just understand that this is a process. And there are going to be lots of speed bumps in the way. Mark Manchester was in the emergency room last week. Things happen. It's part of the healing process. So we met Coco back in 2013, and actually I've got this backwards. She is a registered dietitian and certified nutritional specialist. She began her career in conventional dietetics, but she realized very quickly into her career that she needed a lot more background than she learned in school. And boy, she went and did research, a ton of research. And we feel she's like one of the best of the functional practitioners, including the MDs and the naturopaths. She is wonderful. So her passion is getting people better. And she's like a dog with a bone when you, wait a minute, why is this blood test high or low? Or let's figure out what's going on. So she's wonderful with that. We met her in 2013 when we interviewed Dr. Craig Oster, who's a 26-year ALS survivor, and her website is at coconewton.com. Her practice is full. She will not take any more patients, but she is helping us. We're also working on a lot of things behind the scenes that you are going to see the fruition for hopefully in about 6 months. So she's helping with our ALS reversal study. She's on our advisory panel for that. So there's a lot. Her mission is to educate pals, nutritionists, and other healthcare providers so that we start incorporating nutritional strategies into all of ALS. We'd eventually like this to go to conventional ALS. When things are out of balance, even the neurologists, the conventional neurologists are starting to look at these, and we're very excited about that. They're starting to look at these nutritional deficiencies, getting optimal B12 versus deficient B12, getting optimal vitamin D instead of right on the low minimal. It's very, very excited. Just to note, we spend hours talking to Coco, and she doesn't charge us anything. So she donated her chapter that in her book that's on healingals.org, in the little Coco Newton icon. Take the Coco Newton icon, click on it, and you'll see a link to her chapter. Her chapter is $29. It is definitely worth getting. It is electronically available, and we're just very excited to have Coco here. So thank you so much, Coco. And I'm going to move into Coco's slides, and we'll do the Q&A afterwards. So I'm gonna see if this works. I'm gonna minimize this one. And I'm going to do this one and do a slideshow. I'll see if I have to change my slides though. Can you guys see this, or do I have to stop sharing? It should say part 1 conventional lab test. Did that work?
It's fine.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Okay, and everyone can see slide 2. It says conventional and specialized testing. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Oh, great. Okay, Coco, you may start.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. And maybe some of you were at the last presentation that I gave on food. And as Tish mentioned, you know, I'm just always trying to find and dig deeper, go down more rabbit holes to try to find some of the idiosyncrasies of signs, symptoms, lab tests. And then even with lab tests, you've got to take those tests and you've got to cross-check them with other ways of measuring the same thing. And then you've got to look deeper and deeper into, well, this lab test, why is it that way? And then you've got to look for underlying causes. So as Tish said, it just goes on and on. But my whole focus really is around ALS. And if you look at the literature, you can't just base it on the literature. The literature will only show lab testing that's been lab tests that either prove that this is a biomarker for ALS or not. And that we are so far beyond that. We're so far beyond just looking at biomarkers that say whether ALS is, you know, in the initial phase or in the advanced phase, or, you know, there's this much muscle damage or not. We care about that, but we have to look so much deeper than that. And that's what goes into a functional medicine approach to these labs. And when Tish first asked me to do this, like, I know that this is a multi-webinar or, you know, seminar, whatever we're calling this. It's going to take several of these because there's just too much information. And one of the things that I think I notice is that conventional labs tend to get bypassed in favor of specialized testing because that just looks so much better, and it is. It's very, very important. But sometimes conventional labs get bypassed for their wealth of information that they can have. So I wanted to start educating people about conventional labs and what they can tell us. So let me go back 1 second, please. Yeah. So conventional labs, what I mean by that, these are standard panels of tests that can be ordered by your conventional doctor. It is on their requisition. So they are available. Specialized tests are tests that are done through private labs. And those can be ordered by your conventional doctor, your functional doctor. You can order some of them, actually, which is nice. So the specialized tests are not anything that I'm going to cover on today because it's just way too much. I want to start with the basics because sometimes I think We can't see the forest through the trees, so to speak, with conventional labs. And so, yeah, so that's what we're going to cover. I thought I could cover a whole lot more today, but when I started working on this, which was just a few days ago, because this came up very recently for me to do this.
Yeah, just to realize, I want to thank Coco for coming in at the last minute, because you guys have to realize it does take work to figure out who's going to speak every Sunday. Sometimes we have trouble getting a speaker. Other times we're actually a few weeks out. We've got everything planned. So Coco came at the last minute, and so we really appreciate her being here. So thank you, Coco.
Oh, you're welcome. So, okay, we can go to the next slide. Oh, I just wanted to mention, in case some of you wanted to know what the private labs were, here are some of the names of some of the private labs that we might use, the specialized private labs. But that's just to give this list to you and know that we'll be talking about this in upcoming seminars, webinars. Okay. Now, one of the things that happens with laboratory measurements is that you can be somebody who goes and your doctor might say, well, these all look normal. And there's really nothing wrong with you. And this can happen when people are feeling horrible and then they're told, well, there's nothing really wrong here. And so it almost invalidates their feelings. And so I think also with ALS, and this is just what I'm noticing with different doctors, is that there's so much focus on just managing the ALS, the deterioration, the calories, that I feel like physicians and clinicians are not looking enough into the day-to-day metabolism, because they feel maybe that's just inconsequential with such a huge diagnosis. But I think it's really, really important. And so anyway, I just wanted to explain to you that when we're looking at reference ranges, those reference ranges, below this to above that, that's the reference range. And a reference range includes many unhealthy people. So just because you're within the reference range doesn't mean you're well off at all. And so you have to look much deeper than that. And that's part of the problem, because a lot of people do fall into the ranges. So a conventional reference range is there just to diagnose disease and pathology. It is not looking at how you're functioning. It's not looking at your physiology. It's not looking at your imbalances. It's not looking to optimize your health. And normal is defined as falling within the reference range. And normal is considered the absence of clinically defined disease. And it's very mechanistic. So when you're looking at optimal functioning, you're looking at optimizing your physiology, biochemistry, and correcting imbalances. You're looking for optimal function of your body. And you want it to help you, be prognostic, be preventative, and also corrective. It's a holistic way of looking at these lab values. And when a functional medicine lens is applied to a conventional lab test, so much more information comes out of it. It's like opening Pandora's box. And the treatment addresses the underlying causes of dysfunction.
Coco, I want to just give a little example of what Coco just said. McFinn, his gut said, I think my B12 might be low because I'm vegan. And I think I might have lead because there was a plant near my house growing up. And he went to his traditional medical doctor, and the traditional medical doctor said, your lead is fine, your B12 is fine. Well, his lead was from a blood test. That's not going to show 50 years of blood poisoning or 30 years of blood poisoning when he was a kid. So then he went to his B12 test was around 211. Then he goes to his naturopath, and the naturopath said, well, your B12 is in the quote unquote normal range, but if you want to heal from a neurological disease, it should be in the 700 or 800 range for optimal B12. So as Coco says, optimal makes a difference. And now McFinn takes B12 shots, and his B12 is now in the optimal range. And if you'll remember who McFinn is, he is now walking after being be in a wheelchair with only 2 fingers of movement in one hand, and now he's walking again. The other thing that his naturopath said is we can't test lead with blood and get any definitive idea of how much lead is in your body tissues. So he went to doctor's data, and they did what we call a provoked urine collection test. And he collected his urine for 6 hours. He took 2 little DMSA pills. He collected his urine for either 6 hours or 24 hours, sent it back to the lab. And his was 15 times the safe amount of lead for a human being. So his naturopath then had a clue. And yet that was, as Coco said, from a functional medical lens, looking at 2 labs, whereas the traditional doctor said, oh, these are both normal. Mm. So this is why this talk is so important for ALS, because those 2 labs saved McFinn's life. And that's why he's walking again. So I will let you go on.
Oh, no, that's a great example. And feel free to, pipe in with these examples, because that brings the reality of this and, to everybody. And stories, we remember stories. You may not remember everything in a slide, but you might remember a story, and you'll get the significance of Tish's message. Now, just in terms of getting lab tests, most doctors will do a complete metabolic panel and a CBC, or a comprehensive metabolic panel, a CBC, and maybe a lipid profile. But beyond that, a lot of pals and a lot of patients in general don't get anything. And but so much more is available through the doctor's office. And so not all of them might be covered by insurance. That's going to vary. But like I said, conventional labs give a wealth of information on nutritional and metabolic status when you look at them through a functional medicine practitioner's lens. And also know, as Tish said, some of those labs may not be enough, and you need to use specialized labs to make sure. And I'll talk about B12 today too. So, okay, next one. All right, so what you might encounter when going to see a doctor. Now, some doctors are not really keen on having their patients request what they want, ask a lot of questions. It can be a dicey situation in some cases when doctors feel that is their purview, that is their territory. And so let's say, I'm working with somebody and I'm trying to get some labs done through just the conventional labs, just the labs that are already available through their menu of labs in the requisition. And I've had patients say, oh my gosh, I was told these labs are medically unnecessary, that insurance probably won't cover them. Or I will not order them since somebody else recommended them, or you need to get these procedural codes for each test, and they hand it back and make me do that, which is a real pain. And, or I won't order tests when I don't know what to do with the results. At least that person's being honest. They're worried about being sued or something, ordering a test and then not knowing what to do with the result, and maybe somebody identifying that in court. And people have been told whoever's asking you to get these tests is wasting your time and money. So I just don't want you to feel deterred by that. In fact, go in anticipating this could happen. And I think that gradually becoming educated in all that we're going to be talking about, you will have a better way of speaking up for yourself as to why you want them, or you'll just change doctors. And I've had a lot of patients, a lot of pals just switch doctors till they can find a doctor that is open-minded, would say to the patient, well, I don't really know, but I'm willing to learn, and is not in a fear mode or a territorial mode. So I just wanted you to be aware of some of the speed bumps that might happen on the way to getting your labs done.
Yes, I'm going to give an example of that as well. We had one pals who asked at the ALS clinic, said, I need my B12 tested and my vitamin D tested. And, you know, it turned out that she's spending all her time inside and her vitamin D was low. Well, it's really important. It's one of those things that's optimal. They're not testing. And actually her B12 is low also. B12 actually is having an issue, different issue at the moment. But I've had several pals come and say that they tested low, and why didn't my ALS clinic test me to begin with?
Oh, yeah.
So this happens a lot. And so just ask. There's no reason they can't test. And again, your B12 is going to come in at 200, very normal. And Coco will also talk later what happens if your B12 is too high, because it might not be getting into your cells. So just because it's in the blood doesn't mean it's in the cells. But the point is, you may ask, even at the ALS clinic, for these tests. These are tests that are important for general health, and you are entitled to ask for them.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Next slide. All right, so this is not even a completely exhaustive list, but you know, this is a start. So the comprehensive metabolic panel I'm going to be talking about today, plus a couple of extras. That's as far as I could get. And so I'm just going to keep chipping away at this, you know, on other webinars as we go through this, because they're so important. So let's go to the next slide. So what is in a comprehensive metabolic panel? I know everybody here has had this done. It's looking at liver function and kidney function, electrolytes and fluid balance, proteins, blood sugar, and calcium. And okay, I'm going to be going over some of these now, so we can go to the next slide. Okay, so with blood sugar, you know, we know that with a high blood sugar, you know, people typically think of, do I have diabetes or not? That's the glucose in the blood. And even that, the range, and I didn't put it in here, but the range is really too high. So a optimal glucose would definitely at least be under 100 and ideally not higher than 90. But other things you would look at with somebody who has too high a glucose would be a possible thiamine deficiency, B1, and fatty liver and insulin resistance. So I would want to know, because there's disorders of blood sugar metabolism and insulin metabolism in ALS. So if someone had a really abnormal glucose, I would want to investigate that further. Another value is a total protein, and the total protein in the blood is measuring protein that's in the blood and also in the organs, you know, being used as muscle for like your heart, your lungs, and are huge protein reservoirs and muscle reservoirs. So if your total protein is low, I would be looking at, okay, what is wrong with your protein absorption at the gut level? Is there malnutrition? Is there low stomach acid? Because stomach acid is so important for the first phase of protein digestion. Is there a pancreatic deficiency of digestive enzymes? So that would alert me right away that there's some nutritional parameters. Now I'd have to, yeah, let's go to the next slide. So we're going to look at albumin. It's a major blood protein, and it is the protein that is really reflecting your viscera, your organs. So when that starts going low, then you know there's malnutrition. And so a normal lab range is considered 3.5 to 5.5, but optimal is closer to 4 to 5. And these may not look like big differences to you because you're looking, you know, at 5.5 versus 5.0 or 3.5 versus 4.0. And that may look, you know, really, really inconsequential, but it is. And a low albumin is reflecting malnutrition, could reflect inflammation, low stomach acid, oxidative stress when there's too many free radicals, a need for vitamin C, liver dysfunction, and B6 deficiency. So there's more, but a low albumin is a big red flag. And so when you look at your own lab tests, I'd rather see you, closer to 4.5 to 5. 4 to 5 is considered optimal, but I'd rather see you even, up a little bit. So that's something to look at. When you have a high albumin, one of the key reasons for that is dehydration. So if your protein levels are abnormally high, that is something to check, is hydration status. Okay, now globulin, it's produced in the liver, and it functions throughout the whole body to clear the body of abnormal cells, tissues, microbes. It's part of the whole antibody system, the complement system, part of the immune system, and clotting proteins. And so here, a normal lab range would be 2.0 to 3.9, but optimal is 2.4 to 2.8, a much narrower range of what is optimal. And if you have a high globulin, that's going to key me into low stomach acid, fatty liver, oxidative stress, free radicals, heavy metal toxicity, immune activation, parasites. So what happens is I see one, offset lab value like this. And then my next step is to ask all these questions. What's causing it? I don't have a diet for globulin. I don't have a vitamin for, a high globulin. No, you have to actually address the underlying issue. And all of these things are all involved for anybody with a central nervous system issue, like ALS. This will determine your ability to digest food properly, absorb food properly, and it's another clue for heavy metals. So I see a globulin and I need to address that. And if it's a low globulin, I'd be looking at digestive dysfunction and inflammation, immune insufficiency, anemia, or chronic viral and bacterial infections. And then there's a ratio that can help you look at a few other things. A high albumin to globulin might clue us into the thyroid not functioning properly and the adrenal glands not functioning properly. And a low albumin to globulin might steer us towards looking at liver dysfunction and immune activation. So as I go through these, I don't want this to seem really dry to you, and it might, because it's just like arrows going up and down and numbers and everything. But know that under the lens of a functional medicine practitioner, this is where, the roots of a lot of your metabolic imbalances take place. And I just want to stop for a second and say, addressing metabolic imbalances is what a functional medicine practitioner needs to do to help someone with ALS. And it's not just about, well, this or that, does that work for ALS or does that not work for ALS? I need to know the patient, I need to know the metabolism, and I need to look in the, in the weeds of all of this to start to get a grip on what's going on in the body. So, okay, next one. So you might, you see carbon dioxide, chloride, blood urinary nitrogen, creatinine. A high carbon dioxide might signify low stomach acid, and a low carbon dioxide, you'd want to check vitamin B1 status when something called an anion gap is over 12. And here is another big qualifier. None of these labs can be looked at in splendid isolation. You can't just look at a lab and go, oh, it's high or low, so it means this or that. You have to, okay, if it's high, then you have to look at what other labs are also high or low to start to look for the pattern that exists, because there are many caveats to addressing these labs. I couldn't put them all in here. You would probably find it, just too excessive. But I just want you to understand that in a functional medicine lens, you don't just look at each lab in splendid isolation. And so, okay, on to chloride. A low chloride could, back again, Tish, sorry. A low chloride could signify low stomach acid. A high blood urinary nitrogen could also signify low stomach acid. And let me just stop a second about low stomach acid, because I didn't make a slide just on that, but I think there needs to be one. Low stomach acid is a problem in many ways. And if you think it exists, then it needs to be addressed. So with a low stomach acid, your ability to digest protein is automatically compromised, because the first phase of protein digestion is in the stomach. And then the second thing is that B12 is activated. There's something that is made in the stomach that binds with B12 to help activate it in the gut. And if you have low stomach acid, in other words, your stomach is too alkaline, that won't happen. And so your B12 status can be compromised. And so you could give, and that's why sometimes injections of B12, that'll bypass this step. And in people who don't respond to B12 supplements orally, this could be one of the reasons, is that the stomach acid is too low. And the other thing about stomach acid is that, now go back, is that it is the first place where bacteria that aren't supposed to be in your gut get killed, because it's the most acidic part of your body, your stomach. So if your stomach fluids are too alkaline, bacteria that normally would be killed in the stomach can pass through into the gut. So I see that I need a slide just on that, and we can make one. Okay, so with a high BUN, that could be a problem with low stomach acid, excessive protein intake, dysbiosis. A low BUN could be low protein diet, malabsorption, poor digestion, problems with liver detoxification and function. We think about all these things. And a low creatinine, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, will represent muscle and nerve degeneration, and can represent liver disease too. Okay, next one. So, interestingly enough, with calcium, mostly calcium is being tested to just look for parathyroid disease or diseases of the bone. Really not something that comes up a lot, but there was a study that showed how high serum calcium can mimic ALS. So high calcium levels in general impair cell membranes. And it can happen with excessive vitamin D intake when too much calcium is absorbed. But truly high calcium is seen in primary hyperparathyroidism. And some of the symptoms like fatigue, muscle weakness, lower limbs, and bulbar symptoms can occur. So primary hyperparathyroidism, which would happen with a super high calcium level, should be something that's ruled out. If your calcium is really low, then I'd be concerned about vitamin D deficiency, potentially essential fatty acid deficiency, low stomach acid again, and your mineral status. So you can see how one little lab test can lead you down so many different roads in trying to understand the underlying problems that a person's having. Okay, next one. So the alkaline phosphatase, now this is an enzyme that's made mostly in the liver, but some of it's made in the intestine and the kidneys. And so look at the ranges here. The conventional, or the quote normal lab range, is 25 to 120, and an optimal range is 70 to 100. Now these are big differences. A low alkaline phosphatase, less than 70, is associated with zinc deficiency. So you would need to test serum zinc. It can also happen with low fat and a diet that's too low in fat and too low in protein. And a high alkaline phosphatase can represent liver damage, toxins, leaky gut, malabsorption. It's associated with increased need for vitamin C, especially when there's also a low albumin and there's low iron values. So you see how, like, even that value, the elevated alkaline phosphatase, it might be associated with a vitamin C, a need for more vitamin C, but then that would have to occur if you also saw low albumin and low iron values. So you can see where you have to look at for patterns. And excess ingestion of vitamin D can increase the alkaline phosphatase also. Okay, next one. Now these are liver enzymes, and some labs will call them SGOT, some will call them AST, and these are enzymes that are in the muscle, the liver, the heart, the kidney, the lungs. Again, here you'll see quite a difference between the conventional or quote normal lab range and the optimal lab range, 0 to 40 versus 10 to 30. And with this enzyme, when it's elevated, you would want to investigate liver detox issues. So that would lead you to a urinary test for heavy metals, or other toxin testing for other chemicals and environmental pollutants. There might be liver congestion, so there could be problems with the liver being able to make the bile and the gallbladder. There could be a congestion issue there. And there could be some problems with the liver being able to conjugate toxins in order to make them able to be eliminated by the body. It could be high with excessive muscle breakdown or active viruses. So you see what a rabbit hole just one test again can take you down to look at. But they're clues. And that's really what a functional medicine practitioner is doing. I mean, just imagine a big magnifying glass looking for clues. And if it's low, you would think about protein deficiency or malabsorption or B6 deficiency, especially with the next lab value that we're going to look at on the next slide. Oops, yeah, okay. So this is SGPT, ALT, and you will see these on your comprehensive metabolic panel. Now this enzyme is highest in the liver, and it really does signify damage to liver cells. Again, there's quite a difference between the conventional and optimal lab range. And so when it's elevated, there's liver dysfunction and excessive muscle breakdown. Again, when it's low, it could have to do with B6 deficiency, fatty liver, protein deficiency, and malabsorption. So when the SGPT, the ALT, is higher than the one I just showed you before, SGOT, AST, then you really know that this is more of a liver problem than if the other is higher. So the SGPT is going to be the strongest indicator of liver dysfunction. I can't hear you.
You guys are not expected to know all this.
No.
You're expected to be familiar with all of this. So why this is important is that you need to be educated patients, right? So if you're interviewing functional medical doctors, or you have a functional medical doctor and he's really not looking at some of these things, it's time to say, hey, what about this? This is what I noticed. See how this doctor responds. And if he's like, wow, that's great, let me check this out, then that's the kind of doctor you want, who's going to be checking this out for you. Most of them know it, but they're not perfect. These are human beings, and they might have not noticed a couple of things. So if you point them out and they have a really good response, fantastic. Let me look into this. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. And if you have a doctor who says, and just is so dismissive of all of this, it might be something to consider a different functional medical practitioner. And Coco is one to tell you, you learn more from your patients, right? The mm-hmm. good ones all do. The good functional medical practitioners learn as much from their patients. And then they go and check this out. And it's often the patients, and we've looked at all of these reversals, and this is what works. The patients are able to bring their practitioner, hey, this is what's going on. I've been reading about this. What do you think? And so that's why it's important for you guys to listen to be educated about this. If you have ALS or your family as a member has ALS, this is to educate you to be educated about choosing your practitioners.
I think so. And I'm seeing one question that's coming in on the chat, and I just feel like this is a good time to address that because maybe other people are thinking the same thing. And the person asked, can you provide us with a list of the most relevant lab tests related to ALS? That's what I'm doing. So these are all relevant. And I cannot like take it down to 10 tests because all of these are relevant. And the thing is that I look at somebody who has ALS, that's a diagnosis. But I can have 10 people with ALS in the room, and everybody has it for different reasons. People don't all have the same metabolism. They don't have the same genetics. They're not digesting the same. They're not metabolizing the same. There's various levels of toxins or not in people. So there's so much variety within a person that you can't just say, oh, these are the tests that are ALS tests. They're all important. So, and when I look at a person, I'm looking at the person that has a diagnosis. I'm not treating the diagnosis. So I'm going beyond the diagnosis. I hope that answers that, and that people gradually just get more comfortable with the fact that I'm trying to correct things at a cellular level that will then hopefully have a chain of reactions that help at the larger level, at the muscle level, at the energy level, at the breathing level, and so forth. So, okay, B12 comes up a lot, and so I just wanted to...
Well, on the right slide. Is this the right slide? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So we'll just talk about B12. And I have, stories like this for lots of others down the road, but didn't have time to prepare more for today. So B12, and I see there are some questions about B12 too. When you measure the B12 in your blood, you're measuring free B12 and protein-bound B12. So you have some B12 that's, in your blood, it's not bound to anything, it's free. And then you have some B12 that is bound to proteins. Now there is a key protein that is called holotranscobalamin. That is the key protein that, you don't have to know this right now, I just want you to get the idea. But it's the protein-bound B12 that gets inside your cells to be metabolized. So now a normal lab range, and I think I got this from LabQuest, this one says 190 to 950. Now anybody, don't tell me that if my B12 measures 191, that I have the same or equivalent, B12 status as somebody who measures 949, because we both happen to be in the normal range. This range is, especially on the low end, is incorporating a lot of people with B12 problems on there. They don't have enough for their cells. They can't get the energy. And, but in a conventional world, they would be ignored. The optimal range, now this can be debated. It could be 50 to 500 to 1,000, 500 to 1,300. You have to find out what's optimal for you, but anybody who's under 500 is definitely too low. So low B12 is significant for what's called macrocytic anemia. And part of the reason for it could be low stomach acid. There could also be due to bacteria in the gut, parasites can affect B12 getting into the body. And then that's where you would think, okay, we need to look at a comprehensive digestive stool analysis, and that would be one of the specialized tests. A SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That could be a cause. If a person has been on acid blocking drugs like Protonics, for example, that could be a problem. A vegan diet that does not add supplementation of B12 could be a cause of low B12. Now, high B12, well, let me just qualify something. If you have a low B12 reading, it's accurate. There's no real dispute over that. Now, high B12. So I started seeing high B12s in some of my most ill patients before I started working with ALS. And I was seeing high B12 in people that weren't even taking vitamins and definitely didn't have even a high B12 diet. And I was seeing measurements, sometimes up to 2,000. And their doctors were thinking, wow, you have great B12 status and you have extra B12 in the attic in case you need it someday. Well, B12 isn't stored like that. So high B12 has been a real concern of mine. And there are, underlying pathologies that cause a functional deficit of B12. So you can have high B12 in your blood and you can be at a cellular level deficient in B12. So it's not doing you any good. And so you would want to look at, I wanted to say here that there's often an elevated homocysteine level. And I think that's very important for ALS patients to have that measured. And it's not part of a comprehensive metabolic panel. And or a methylmalonic acid can coincide with a high B12, and it can also coincide with a low B12. So, for example, homocysteine is part of the whole what's called methylation cycle. You need B12 to metabolize it, and you also need B12 to metabolize this thing called methylmalonic acid. So these are things I would be asking for, looking at to determine if somebody's deficient in B12, whether or not their blood level of B12 was low or very high. So what happens is in methylation, you hear that word, that is a whole nother topic, but it does have something to do with your genetics. But it also, toxins can disrupt your methylation cycle. But B12 is, suffice it to say that B12 is not getting inside your cells to be used for energy. And if there's oxidative stress, which we know there's oxidative stress in ALS, that's another reason that B12 metabolism is going to be compromised. And so with oxidative stress, then this is where the rabbit hole goes. Then you'd want to look at glutathione levels and vitamin C, for example, that's needed to regenerate glutathione. So that takes you into more testing. But see, what that all does is lead you to the factors that are causing your problems. And what's causing your problems may not be causing your problems or your problems. And that's why this is so individualized. So someone asked, measuring a B12, I think it's polymoles per liter, but it will be different on different labs. So I see labs from Europe, I see labs from, even in the US, and sometimes the measurements are going to be different, the units of measurement. Let's see here. So yeah, I would love to get, and when I have B12 questions, I would love to get what's called a total holotranscobalamin measured, but I can't get doctors to do that. It can happen like if you're in a clinical research center in certain universities, and I think they measure it more in Europe. But the big takeaway here, if your B12 levels are very high, you probably have a cellular B12 deficiency and you need more B12. Now that said, and this takes you down another rabbit hole, the form of B12 is really important. And we always hear about methylcobalamin because it is a bioactive form of B12 for the cells. But some people do better with other forms, adenosylcobalamin, hydroxycobalamin. So that is something that actually can be better understood with a genetic test. So I sometimes think it's good to, if you don't have the genetic test, to vary between those three forms of B12. One is called methylcobalamin, one is called hydroxycobalamin, one is called adenosylcobalamin. So, I mean, we could do more on B12.
And just to let you know, everyone, the cheapest form of B12 is cyanocobalamin, which you want to stay away from because it's
yes.
made with cyanide.
Yeah, and I am not seeing that many products that have cyanocobalamin anymore, except you always need to check because you'd be surprised, you know, it is added. But the good products, the good companies are not putting cyanocobalamin in there anymore. But, you know, you should double check your,
Yes, and the regular companies are still, I see it all the time on the medium and low end supplements. So you guys, you all need to check that for yourself. This is part of the patient responsibility.
Mm-hmm. So it's nanograms per milliliter, by the way, for the measurement of B12. So I think it was, yeah, someone had asked that. And I had said polymoles, but I've seen it in polymoles per liter too in other, I don't know, other countries. So for B12 and ALS, I mean, it's really important for the central nervous system. We know that it prevents loss of neurons. We know that it prevents damage to our DNA. We know it typically declines with age anyway. And, you know, you heard all the reasons a person might have low B12 and not even know it. So it's important to clarify that. And, you know, getting into the research, again, you know, the research, and one of the issues with nutrition research in ALS is that it's typically, they're just like adding B12 and deciding whether it works or not, but they're not correcting any of the other imbalances in the person. They're not comparing diet. They're not looking to see if the person has low stomach acid or digestive disturbances that might lower the B12. So, or they're certainly not looking at their genomics. So don't be discouraged that, you know, that you're not going to get a powerful B12 cures ALS study. But a preliminary study did show improved muscle electrical activity after 2 weeks with B12 injections, and determined that it maybe prolongs ventilation-free survival if started early in the diagnosis.
Okay, and just, I want to pipe in here again. We talked about this. We've always said we're not crazy about a lot of the traditional studies that are going on because we feel you have to throw 20 things in. So a B12 without changing your diet, getting rid of toxins, correcting the other nutritional deficiencies, to me doesn't make sense. And I think that's why you're not, a lot of these studies, it's not like the things that they're testing are not good. It's just that they need to be used in combination with so many other things in order to be effective. Yeah. So Dr. Bredesen puts it at 39 holes in your roof. You leak, your roof is still going to be leaking until you've corrected all 39 holes.
Yes, that's so true. And you can't look, again, you can't look at a supplement in isolation either. So you can't look at a lab test in splendid isolation nor one supplement. Let's see. I see a B12 injection question. Okay, so is that okay? Because I don't have that many.
Please take it. Yeah. And actually, we do have a Q&A. Both Julie
okay. So these are
taking the Q&A.
These are key takeaways, and there's more to this. But labs need to be evaluated. So you get these labs, but your functional medicine practitioner is going to cross-check these labs with all sorts of other lab measurements. We're going to see what patterns exist. We're going to relate it to your symptoms and our understanding of metabolism. And understanding your metabolism will come with certain more sophisticated testing of your metabolism, like organic acid testing, amino acid testing, fatty, you know. And then you cross-check it all to see, well, where is the strength of the information coming from? And then you have to make a clinical decision then as to what to advise somebody. As I said, you can't always judge a lab in isolation. Labs should be used to help us discover vitamin inadequacies or deficiencies or sometimes toxicities, minerals, other nutrients, such as glutathione. Labs should help us ask the right questions. I think that's like a major thing, is that labs should not be the be-all, end-all of information. It needs to be the beginning of us asking the right questions so that we can go further in understanding our patient's unique metabolism. And then what's the purpose of doing all this? Is to correct imbalances and to optimize function. And and then the other takeaway is being your own best advocate for this. So for example, as we go into, we go back to one of my initial lab slides, please, Tish, back in the beginning, all the way back, not the first one, but maybe the second or third one, if you can.
Okay, it's the first or second one up here?
Yeah, well, not the first one, but this
second one.
Yeah, I can't see
one.
anything.
Oh, you can't see it. Let me just do a full slideshow then. Just slideshow. I'll just take you through, and you can let me know when to stop.
So yeah. The next one, this one. Oh, so today, how much did I get through? Only the first. Plus I added in B12. Okay. And I have a lot more to share with you about these that are very related to your health and ALS and optimizing your metabolism. So that's how much thought goes into this, I think. I mean, it's not simple. You're not expected to do all this, but even if from today, you get an idea that your comprehensive metabolic panel, which may look like very unsophisticated, especially if everything falls in the normal range, how many times have you heard from doctors, oh, you're just a little under the range, or you're just a little over the range? That's okay. That's not okay. And there should be understanding of why that's happening. Usually you get that's okay is because the clinician themselves has no clue why it's happening. So I'm ready for questions.
Thank you so much. You can answer the B12 question to start, and then
Okay.
Kathy McDonough and Coco Kathy Cummins, Julie McDonough and Kathy Cummins will be feeding you questions after that. But since you had that B12 question, if you remember it, otherwise I'll let Julie start off.
Yeah, I mean, you were asking about the B12 injections. I mean, it can be different kinds of B12. It might be methylcobalamin. You can get it in adenosine and hydroxycobalamin. You just definitely don't want it in the cyanocobalamin. How much? I don't know right now. It's how often? It depends on the person. It depends upon how much repletion that person needs, and that has to be decided by, your individual clinician.
Exactly. We've had a lot of patients, PALs on once a week, but again, the dosage is going to vary between PALs that's needed. So, Julie.
Yes, I'm here. Hey, why again, Coco? Just because this came up in the chat, the cyanocobalamin is not good again because.
So it is not metabolically active. So it requires too many steps to become bioactive or metabolically active, and sometimes people cannot convert from cyanocobalamin very well due to their genetics, and so it's just not as effective.
Okay, thank you. All right, you want me to continue, Trish?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I wondered if you'd mind turning on your video after the next question.
You know what? And I apologize. I have a very temperamental camera, and I've been clicking on it. It might just go on as I'm talking, so I apologize for being in the dark for everybody. One of the first questions, and I hope I can answer this, was these slides will be on the Healing ALS website. In a day,
we don't normally do that, but what I'm going to do is I was thinking about that today. I think it would be very helpful. Maybe with Coco's permission, what I'll do is I'll take little screenshots of each of the slides and place them in the notes section.
How about if I send you a PDF of the slides?
Yeah, we could do that as well.
And I want to make some typo corrections and add something on
Perfect.
hydrochloric acid. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Does a high vitamin B6 level in your blood mean that you actually have a B6 deficiency? And is this due to kidney failure?
All right. So I don't know if it's due to kidney failure or not. I can't answer that. But I can tell you that the same problem with B12 can exist with B6. So yeah, so so it's interesting because I've been seeing high elevated B6s, and it's usually not measured. So a lot of people don't know what their B6 is. And typically nobody's really interested in high B6 because, it's just thought to be very rare or that it's part of a birth inborn error of metabolism. And so I've always asked about B6. I've queried my colleagues for years, but I think I'm understanding more of it now. I think, but I'm not positive that there's there's a tissue nonspecific alkaline phosphatase enzyme. There's this enzyme that is needed for B6 to be activated and to get into the cells. So you can't really test for that enzyme. As far as I know, you could look at a genomics, like you could look at somebody's genes and find out if they have like a polymorphism of that enzyme. I haven't been able to do that yet. So this is just my thought, but this enzyme is needed to get B6 inside the cells, from the blood to inside the cells where it is used for energy. So, and I'm seeing some extraordinarily high B6 levels in ALS patients, PALS, and previous to working with PALS, I saw it in some pretty unhealthy, patients. And so I don't have a definite explanation. I've definitely seen it as a pattern with PALS. If someone has a really good genomic evaluation and they could look at the TNSALP enzyme and find out if they have a polymorphism there, that might be explaining it. So I wish I had a good answer for you, but I do know that it doesn't mean if you have high B6 in your blood that you're doing well in your cells. I think it's a B12 type of picture.
Thank you.
Okay.
Either Julie or Kathy, go ahead. Julie?
Okay, I'll keep going down the chat list. Somebody wrote that since they, many of the not conventional testing, patients have to pay for them themselves. So do you recommend, which ones would you recommend that are an absolute must? So for example, mercury or Lyme testing or liver function.
So I think my two top choices would be a NutriVal. Genova does something called a NutriVal. It's NutriVal. I think that would be a choice. Now, I say that because I spend so much time combing through that. You can comb through it again and again and again and again, and then look at it with other labs that come from, other lab testing and symptoms and so forth. I think it's really valuable. It's how much time you spend evaluating it that will give the patient the bang for the buck. It's an expensive test, and I see a lot of I see a lot of people getting the test, but then I don't see sometimes enough sophisticated evaluation of it, because the test will give you the summary. It'll give you a summary page that has, you need this, it'll give you like a list of vitamins and minerals, and you need to take this much, that much, this much, that much, and it'll tell you what you're high and low in. But I find that kind of cursory, and I would not use that by itself. For example, you can do a NutriVal, and it can be suggested in different places that you're too low in iron. but that doesn't mean you're low in iron. You have to cross-check that with a complete, a CBC, complete blood count, and an iron panel, and ferritin, and so forth. And I've seen sometimes when people just like look at the short summary part of everything they need to do and aren't really looking in the weeds of it. So, but I think the NutriVal is very valuable if you spend the diligence to comb through it. And so, yeah, so that's one. And the other one, the gut test, I think a comprehensive digestive stool analysis. A year from now, who knows which one I'm going to like the best. They're coming out with so many new ones. I think all of them have good things, and then some have better than other. And it's just sort of a, six of one, half dozen of another. But I think it's really valuable because in the comprehensive stool test, you're going to get an idea, first of all, of bacteria, viruses. In some tests, you'll get the viruses, but you'll get parasites, you'll get yeast or fungal overgrowth. You'll get that. But you'll also get whether or not there's inflammation in your gut, whether the immune system of your gut is working right or not, if it's overexpressed, if it's underexpressed. And then that'll give you an idea. There's indicators in there that'll give you an idea of whether it's potentially that toxins are being recirculated in your body and not being eliminated through your gut. It tells you so much. It tells you about malabsorption. It tells you about whether or not your pancreas is making enough digestive enzymes for you. I just feel like there's so much valuable information in that. And then a urinary chelator provoked test pre and post for heavy metals. And I guess those would be the top three, just for everybody to have. Of course, there's so much more information. In a perfect world, you'd want to, sample the whole buffet of tests, but that's just not realistic for most people. Now, some of those tests can be covered by insurance. So that's why I always encourage people to go to their licensed, doctor to have that done. If I order the test for you, it'll never be covered by insurance because I'm not a doctor. And for people who can afford it, there are some third-party companies that you can order the labs yourself, and you don't have to have a physician order it, but that it always costs you more. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that was great.
And I think a test isn't really worth much unless you know how to read it, or you have someone, a functional practitioner, to read it for you, because most of us are not at that level that can understand what these tests mean. Obviously, the heavy metal one is $160, as the third one that Coco mentioned, and that is absolutely, worth getting, and it's pretty easy to read.
It is. I mean, it's pretty black and white, so you can look at it and see your pre and your post and know what your urine looks like without a chelator and what it looks like with a chelator that's going to try and take different metals out of your storage. When you look at a blood test for metals, so sometimes you might say to your doctor, I'm really interested in having, to know if I'm high in mercury or arsenic or cadmium or lead. And the doctor says, sure, we can, add that to your lab test, and it comes back all normal. Well, if it comes back high, you better really be, doing something about it quickly. But if it comes back normal, that means nothing, because a lot of those metals will only come back in the blood with recent exposure. So if you haven't been recently exposed, it won't show up. But if you have a long history of exposure, and it could be very gradual exposure. There wasn't one day that you had a mercury overdose or a lead overdose or something, but it could just be kind of the incremental over the years exposure. One of my patients with ALS, we figured out why his lead was so high, and it was because throughout school in his early years, and when he ate out all the time, this is in Europe, he ate his meals on newspaper. It was wrapped in newspaper instead of plates. And so the lead from the ink got into his food and got into his system. And since then, he's been an avid Chinese tea drinker, going to really, nice little tea houses in in Europe and getting, very nice tea that was high in lead. So sometimes people just don't know. You think, oh, did I have an accident, or did I live next door to a factory, that emitted these toxins? But sometimes,
Yeah, and that happened with Eric Edney. He actually got Chinese herbal tea, and it turned out it was full of lead and other toxins, and he actually ended up in the hospital before he realized what it was. So that's very, very important. Also, a pal's actually called me this morning and said, by the way, I went to my neurologist last week and I asked for the doctor's data or another chelated, like a urine provoked challenge test, collection test, and the neurologist said, well, I talked to like 3 of my colleagues and they have no idea what this test is, and of course I can't order it for you. But again, please don't expect your neurologist or your traditional medical practitioners to know about these tests. They were given 4 hours of nutrition and 0 hours of toxicology in medical school. It does not mean they're bad doctors. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they haven't been trained in functional medicine. So don't expect them to know about that. This is why we have to take, you guys all have to take our health, all of us have to take our health into our own hands and find a doctor, a functional practitioner that does have the knowledge that we need to assist us.
Trish, that kind of ties it into one of the questions of, it's frustrating when certain states won't allow naturopaths to run the tests, like Coco had mentioned, but your primary doctor won't run them either. So how do you get around this?
So, yeah, it's a great question. It's just such a logistical question. I know New York State is really a tough one. So there's creative ways of doing this. One is, if it's one of the ones you can order yourself, you go through a company called Direct Labs. That's one of them, Direct Labs, and you can order several tests yourself. Like you can order the NutriVal, you can order the GI test. I don't know that you can order the urinary toxic metals test yourself. I'd have to double check because.
Right, but doctor's data allows that in 6 states, but generally as long as doctor's data will do it as long as you're a licensed practitioner. So for that urine challenge test, you can get it from your functional dentist.
Yes.
As long as they have a license in your state, they can order it for you. They send you the kit, you send it off, they send the results to the licensed practitioner who will send the results on to you and review them with you. So there are absolutely ways to get off of it, and look for a different doctor, medical doctor that will order the test if your particular medical doctor won't. A lot of the functionally oriented doctors are more than happy to order these tests.
They are. Don't give up. And they are. And sometimes, like, it might be the first time they've ever ordered the test, or the second or third time, and they may not be, as familiar with it. But I've had doctors say, look, I really want to help this patient. I'm just going to learn everything I can. I'll take some of the webinars online from the company that makes the tests. There's ways of getting there. And, or you might work with a doctor in a different state, and not even try to just look within your neighborhood.
And then on that same doctor, I had a lot of questions, people asking, do we have a list for naturopathics? Because a lot of people were asking about naturopath or functional medicine doctors in specific areas, obviously where they lived. So do we have, Tish and Scott, anything collected as far as, we've discussed this before.
We don't, but I will give you what we do is there's functionalmedicine.org, also ifm.org. They have a list of practitioners in your area. There's also ACAM in the healingals.org. In the Where Do I Start document, there's a little link called How Do I Find a Medical Professional in My Area? And absolutely do that with a combination of getting referrals, ask around, do your own homework, call up the office, get a feel. I mean, it's a process of finding someone good, but generally once you get in, to this area, you start, word of mouth is amazing. We have found some amazing functional medical doctors in our area that started out with just going to these websites, but then when you find one, I actually got a referral from one who didn't have his practice open, but he gave me a referral to like 4 more, and then I'm like checking these guys out, and so you'd be surprised. If you work, you can find them.
I agree. And then just a couple questions to ask, because what I started doing for some people, especially when my practice was full, and I just said, okay, I'll talk to certain people who, just for like 15 minutes, half hour, and try to help people navigate to where they're going to go. And so when you do look at let's say you live in zip code, 88888, then you go to the IFM or ACAM, I guess, and they'll tell you who is in the area within 10 miles, 25 miles, 50 miles, 100, 150, something like that. Or you can just look in the state, and it really varies in different areas, obviously, how many of those doctors are around. But what I have found, I've done a lot of calls to a lot of doctors in different areas, and I've found that some will say, nope, I don't treat ALS. So you, of course, are not going to try and talk that person into seeing you as a patient. Some will say, I don't have experience directly with ALS patients, but I have worked with Parkinson's or MS or Alzheimer's, and I'm actually really interested in learning about this. Yeah, I'd love to read your chapter. And let's see what we can do for this patient. That's the kind of person you want. Don't expect to find functional medicine practitioners that are experts in ALS. I can't find them, and I'm pretty well networked. But I find people that are really smart, and they're really motivated, and they want the patients so that they also can learn. And that's how I learned. I knew nothing before I started. So, because that most PALs, they just end up seeing their neurologists and taking all of their direction from their neurologist. But, you guys are all looking outside of the box, and, I just wish you the best in finding that person you can resonate with. And then there's also the personality. You might find somebody who has the criteria you're looking for, but you get in the office and you like or you don't like the way you're treated. And honestly, a patient clinician relationship is just that. It's a relationship at the total level. It's not just, testing and supplements. So.
Kathy, why don't you ask a question? Yeah. Because I want to just introduce Kathy. You guys have seen her on before, but she was diagnosed with PLS in 2005 and ALS in 2008, and here she is in 2020, doing extremely well. So, Kathy, why don't you ask the next question? Because it's wonderful to see someone who has succeeded in reversing ALS be on our call. So, thank you.
Oh, well, my pleasure, and thank you for doing this. I saw one back here. I'm not sure if it got asked or not. Coco, good to see you, Coco.
Kathy.
There was a question about whether or not having amalgam fillings made any difference with B12. Is there a risk in using methyl B12 in the presence of mercury like amalgam fillings?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. There's another interesting one here. Thoughts on NAD precursors such as B3 or niacinamide, nicotinic acid, tryptophan, NMN, NR supplements, and NAD via IV?
Wow. Well, the patients that I've had that have had NAD IV, which is not something I can do, obviously, as a nutritionist, have had varied responses to it, sometimes almost too powerful. And not feeling well afterwards. So maybe it is a dosage issue or a frequency issue. Nicotinamide riboside, NR, has been studied quite a bit and seems to be a very good precursor for NAD. Also, Akkermansia. There's a bacteria that you've heard a lot about lately called Akkermansia muciniphila. It is measured on most of the gut stool tests, and that also makes NAD. So, you know, there's a gut relationship to NAD, and then the nicotinamide riboside as a supplement is often used. And then you've seen the study probably. There was a product, I forget the letters and the numbers, but the essential ingredients were from a company called Elysium Basis, and they make an nicotinamide riboside product that also contains another phytonutrient in it that's supposed to enhance and kind of magnify the effect of the nicotinamide riboside. So that's my knowledge of that. I think that's still really evolving. And the way to know, well, NAD is an issue in every ALS, you know, in every PALS. And then you can dig deeper into it on a NutriVal test, you know, that might look at more areas where the NAD is compromised. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. So there are, this is maybe just slightly a bit off topic, but there are at least 3 or 4 people that are following up on this, being curious about, last time you mentioned the patient had toenail fungus and no longer had it after seeing you. How'd you treat it? Does that mean that your body has too much acid?
Actually, for him, it was purely diet. He had too many carbs, too much sugar, and when he cleaned up his diet, his fungus went away. So I don't know that it's that simple for everybody else. I mean, with toenail fungus, you sometimes need to treat it directly with, you know, oils, like possibly tea tree oil and some others. Or if it's coming, you know, endogenously, if it's being made inside, you'd be looking at, well, do you have a high fungal level in your gut? You know, and do you need to start, is this a systemic fungal problem? Is it all over the body? Is it localized just in the feet? You know, is it, so I don't know.
All right. Okay. Yeah, Elizabeth is asking, why do you recommend that the ALS diet has no dairy or avoid dairy?
So a couple of reasons. There's one study that was done, I think it was in 2016, and I'm not basing my my opinion on this study. It's just one factor. But they found that when they took all these PALs at diagnosis, what food was the most associated with, and not causal, but associated with poor function at diagnosis, like the worst function at diagnosis, and dairy came up as a top food. The other thing is the dairy in our food supply is full of hormones and antibiotics and pesticides, herbicides, and so anything that any dairy product that comes out of a confined animal feeding facility should never be touched. Those are filthy facilities, and the cows are extremely stressed and unhealthy. So they're just for anybody. I would never recommend dairy from any of those sources. It is a highly allergenic food. That doesn't mean you are allergic to it, but it's in the top allergenic foods, along with soy and egg and gluten.
Right, and doesn't it cause inflammation? Isn't it generally inflammatory?
It can be, yeah, for all those, yeah, because think of what's in it, and it can cause inflammation. So it could be, and I'm not talking about lactase deficiency. I'm not talking about getting just bloating and indigestion just because you can't digest the milk sugar, which is lactase. I'm talking about antibodies to the protein in there, and that could be to casein and whey, and there's other proteins in dairy. There's a good test. It's Vibrant America makes a good test that looks at all the components of dairy to find out, you know, what you're allergic to. I think it's like I can't remember the name of it, but it you know, but I just think that dairy, there's just no use for it. And now there are good dairy alternatives, you know, that can actually taste good. But, you know, it needs to be organic, and I think I should say that every time. But I hope that explains something about dairy and my caution over dairy. Now, if you're somebody who, you have cows, you have goats, you have sheep, it could be that your goats or that your neighbor's goats, that you know exactly how they live, what they eat, and you might do well with it. But unfortunately, the larger percentage of people who have a cow dairy allergy also have sheep and goat issues. Just like people who have egg allergies, they also have, like, issues with eggs from quail or duck. And more people with gluten allergies, there's a cross-reactivity with dairy. So if gluten is an issue, there's a higher chance that dairy is going to be an issue.
Interesting.
Okay, and I do want to emphasize organic because, again, we're trying to detox pesticides from the body, and you want the incoming pesticides to be as low as possible. And you talked about that when you were on before, Coco, but maybe you could explain it to the group a little bit more about why they want to eat organic as much as possible.
Well, the thing is, your body is already having difficulty metabolizing. And your liver is a very sensitive organ in ALS. And anything that and your gut is too. I mean, everything is going to be on more alert level. And so when you take in foods that are not familiar, or ingredients that are not natural and not naturally occurring in the body, you are stressing your liver, you're stressing your gut, and you're stressing your immune system with ingredients that are not organic, because they will either contain a lot of additives and chemicals, or they're containing, the pesticides and the hormones and the antibiotics. So all of that has to be detoxified by your body, and it puts more stress on your metabolism.
Okay, so we're getting close to 2:30. Kathy, I'm going to give you one more question. Pick your favorite one. And Julie, I will give you one more question. So pick your favorite one. And then it's not like the rest of them won't be answered. Maybe what we could do is talk to Coco later, and I can maybe type a few of these more answers from the chat. So because we are going on 90 minutes. So Kathy, why don't you give me your last question, and then Julie.
Okay.
All right. Well, Coco, there's a whole bunch on here. They're just saying thank you, and they really appreciate your time and expertise. How about ozone and glutathione IVs having a positive effect on healing the gut and liver? What's your opinion?
Yeah, so ozone, I think, can have a very positive effect, especially if we're looking at bacteria and viruses in the body. That's how I see ozone playing its biggest role. And ozone can be taken rectally and also, IV. Now, that said, ozone can also be, if it's too fast, too much, and a person's having too much die-off, of their microbes, there can be a transitioning period that doesn't feel very well. But the little that I know about it, I mean, we have some doctors, in Michigan that do ozone, and I trust Dr. Brownstein. He's one in Michigan that has a lot of experience with it. I've had it myself, not IV, I was more intramuscular. But I don't know about the home ozone setups. Some people are getting ozone tents, and I really don't know about the effectiveness of it. Maybe some of you can tell me what your experiences have been. And as far as glutathione, I think glutathione infusions is the best way to get glutathione. Glutathione is what's called a tripeptide, and it's made up of glycine and cysteine and glutamate, actually, but don't worry about that. So when you take it orally, it tends to get digested and into its different parts, and then you just hope it all reconnects again in the system. So I think liposomal glutathione might be the best delivery of that orally. I had a patient, I don't know if this person is on the call now or not, who's taking it rectal suppositories at night. And I, in theory, think that could be a really good I don't have any experience with it, but I in theory think that that might be a good way to raise glutathione levels. I asked Dr. Pizzorno about that. I think we talked about him before. He wrote the book on toxins, and he doesn't have any experience with rectal glutathione either. So he hasn't seen any studies on it. And see, what you really want to know is if I take this form of glutathione versus this versus that, what happens to my blood glutathione? And we just don't have all those comparative studies.
Right. We have had some pals that have had good results with rectal insufflation of glutathione. And just to let, if anyone here has not read Dr. Pizzorno's books on toxins, this is a must read if you have pals. So, okay, this is important. This is part of your job. Remember, I said read and research. This is one of them.
Yeah. So I'll hold up the book so you guys can see it. If you
Coco,
like.
can I follow up? How about inhaled? How about nebulized glutathione?
Yeah,
I can't swallow.
Yeah, definitely nebulized. I should have said that. Yeah, but I still don't know, like comparing nebulized to IV to rectal to oral and different forms of salt. I still don't know like how it's going to line up yet.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, Julie, your favorite last question.
In the spirit of the testing, I've had a lot of questions here regarding the heavy metal tests. So our home urine test for heavy metals, and then where I think there was a question on what is the preferred chelating agent. So yeah, I thought if you could just kind of wrap that up, kind of remind everybody again regarding the heavy metals testing.
The provoke test.
The provoke test, yeah, just to kind of answer a couple of questions that I've gotten.
So the provoke test is the best way of getting a heavy metal evaluation. It's not perfect. I don't think there's any perfect test because one of the things is like I think typically DMSA is used, sometimes DMPS, EDTA less, but it depends on the doctor and what they usually use. And
most of the people that I know are DMSA, but DMPS has been contraindicated, at least maybe not by the doctors, but by the patients. People have had reactions to it. So just I would avoid, if it were me, DMPS.
Oh yeah, so DMSA would be the preferred, but you might hear the others, and I think DMSA would be the preferred. So you need a prescription for that, for the most part. It's hard to get DMSA. I don't know if your pals have, pals that you know, Tish, or
well, even my dentist gave me DMSA, so maybe he has a doctor friend that gave him the prescription. But again, because I ordered my heavy metal test from my functional dentist, he actually had it. So he obviously had to get it from a medical doctor.
Right. So I can't give it to somebody. So I'm just saying that.
You can't give it, exactly. But if they order their test through a licensed practitioner.
And they can. And that's usually dosed based, some doctors dose it based on body weight, how much to give the patient, or there's other formulations too that the labs recommend, you know, on how to dose the DMSA. Because you got to figure if you're giving it to somebody who weighs 110 pounds versus 210 pounds, that there should be some reasoning behind the dosage of the DMSA. And it's a one-time chelating. So you can get a reaction, but typically I'm not finding that people are having horrible reactions from it. At least that's not what's coming back. What was the other question?
DMSA.
There was a second part to this question.
Was regarding doing it at home testing for the heavy metals?
Yeah, it's always at home.
Home urine,
which is really nice. So you'll probably get 2 collection, containers. One for the pre-test and one for the post-test. And usually it's about a 6-hour period. We take the chelator, and then any urine that passes for 6 hours all goes into this one container, and then you send those back.
You just mix it up, and then they give the little container, and you send the little container off to the lab. So it's really not, it's wonderful because you can do it at home. It is fantastic.
Yeah, and the stool tests are all at home. And the NutriVal, you can get the kit sent to you. You just have to get, you have to go for a blood draw. But the urine part of it, you do at home.
Okay. And
So
what is
really
high?
nice.
Oh, sorry.
No,
High tungsten. Somebody had asked, taking the metals test and had high tungsten as a result.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that.
Okay.
I don't have any experience in detoxing tungsten. But I would imagine that as soon as you start addressing the nutrients that are needed for detox, so you have to take out the contaminants that, you know, might be coming in. So you have to remove toxins that you can by not taking them in. Then you have to look at, okay, where in the detox pathways you might be deficient. And that's something that comes up in some of this testing, like the NutriVal test. So you get an idea what phase of detox, you know, you need to support with various vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. And some of that you really can learn from genomics testing, you know, like 23andMe. Now, 23andMe won't tell you anything, but you have your own raw data from them. They'll tell you a few interesting things like, you know, whether you fall asleep quickly at night or not, or, you know, tolerate caffeine, but whatever. But there's software that the raw data can be uploaded to get a really good look at your detoxification capabilities just based on your genomics. Like,
right. So we're going to cover
if,
that in another test. So the 23andMe and how you download it and how you put it through this free software so you can get even more information is great. But it's out of, we need to talk that to next time Coco comes to visit us.
Sometime, yeah. I still, you know, you can go on a wild goose chase with too much information there and really not get that much value out of it. So there's certain, but the detox part, that is really valuable. And like, for example, I have a couple of patients who they just, you know, their glutathione genomics are really impaired. So you know that for them, they need to be stimulating their glutathione manufacturing in their body quite a bit. And you know, you can't just look at a serum glutathione level and say, oh yeah, that person has great glutathione status or not. You kind of have to look at their genomics too. And then you can find out if their glutathione is effective. See, that's one of the things. You look at a lab test, and this is like the B12. Well, that's a nice snapshot, but is it effective? And that is something you have to find out, you know, by looking further.
Okay, fantastic. Coco, thank you so much for being here. I'm actually going to mute everyone right now. So you're all muted. Anyone who wants to speak, please unmute yourself. And when you finish speaking, you can mute yourself again so we don't get background noise. If you all go to gallery view, you can all see each other and you can, you know, put your camera on and say hello to your fellow pals, the rest of the people in the community that are fighting ALS just like you are. So please, you know, feel free to share. And again, Coco, thank you so much. Thank you, Julie and Kathy Cummins, for being here and doing the Q&A.
Thank you very much. Yes. And this is going to have to be a little rapid fire before she cuts us off.
Well,
so if you have
yeah,
any
we're
last,
actually just, yeah. So when
really
if you want to share anything, just make it real quick and then mute yourself again so we don't have background noise. So it's wonderful to see everyone here. I think I want to say kudos to every single person in the audience. You've just sat through an hour and 40 minutes of some technical stuff. So you obviously all want to get better, which is fantastic. That's the first piece of this. So
okay, go ahead, Smita. Go ahead and go.
I wanted to know, thank you so much for your nice presentation, how to increase the cellular B12 deficiency levels, because my husband level is 1500, over 1500, but obviously, you know, things are not improving at the moment. And that would give me the opportunity.
Coco, you are muted. Go right ahead, Coco.
Just unmute yourself, Coco.
Okay, I'm sorry, Smita, you're going to have to repeat it because I thought this was discussion time among you guys, and I was just going to listen. But I didn't.
But people like to sneak in extra questions.
That's so fine. Please ask it again. Please ask it again.
Thank you for the lovely presentation. I would want to know about how to increase the cellular B12 level, because my husband's level is over 1500, but how to increase this at the cellular level, the B12?
Okay, so I would still give him B12 You're not doing damage by giving B12, as far as I know. Okay, this sometimes comes up. Can you hurt somebody by giving them B12? And as far as I know, that you're not going to, because you're just trying to get it into the cells. And maybe, where do you live?
UK.
Okay, in the UK, ask about the test called HOLO, H-O-L-O, transcobalamin.
Okay.
It's you might be able to get it easier there than here, and that will be the best way of evaluating someone's B12 status.
All right. Okay.
And then also ask for something called methyl malonic acid. Because what you don't know is his B12 status. You know it's 1500, but you don't know what's getting into the cells and what isn't. And then homocysteine.
Okay.
Get those 3 values, and that'll. Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, is there another last one real quick before?
Or sharing. Everyone can just feel free to share as well.
Go right ahead.
What's your experience with cannabis, say CBD and ALS? Any efficacy at all?
I'm not the best person to ask about that, except for what I hear from pals, and I hear good things. But I don't have, and whether it's breathing or sleep, and other symptoms. So I haven't heard anything negative from anybody, but I'm not well versed in it.
In a future week, we will have a whole session on just cannabis. So just to let everyone know that.
Okay, good.
But in the meantime, do your own research while you're waiting for that to happen. Don't take it. Go ahead and research it, try it out, experiment, that kind of thing.
Okay, man.
I didn't tell you, next week we have Dr. Pimanis coming on. He is from Mexico, and he has had a couple of ALS reversals. And so I think you'll be very interesting. He's a medical doctor from Mexico that's been getting some really good results. So I'm very excited about him. The week after that, Kay Cherry is going to be talking about essential oils because they can be so powerful. And and everyone's been asking about those. How do I add that into my protocol? So just to let you know, a few upcoming weeks.
Coco, can I ask you another question? What is the dose of liposomal glutathione, please? The oral dose.
Well, so typically the oral will be anywhere from like 100 to 250.
All right. Okay.
Of the liposomal glutathione. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'll have to double check that, but yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Might need more though, like I'm just saying it comes in that dosage.
Okay.
One thing I was going to mention, since I was doing the questions, and I know a lot of people have frustrations with finding doctors to order tests or write scripts, is often if you work with a naturopath, a nurse practitioner can do all the script writing and ordering of tests. So I actually found a naturopathic that in part of the practice, there's a a couple of nurse practitioners, and she uses them, as she works with me to say, oh, I'm going to run this blood test or whatever. So you have to see the nurse practitioner. So that's also something to look for as you're doing your search.
Thank you, Julie. That's beautiful. Also, ASEA, ASEA, increases glutathione production by over 800%. It's non-prescription, and it's something you can get from a distributor. It is a multi-level marketing situation, but it is available in the UK, and it's a way to we've had several pals that have had very good results with ASEA increasing the glutathione production on their own. So that's just another product that's available to you guys. It's available in most countries.
Okay, can you repeat again, please? Sorry, I couldn't get
It's called ASEA.
ASEA. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send it. I'll put it in the chat.
That's fine.
So just something you guys can check out too. It increases, I got interested in it because it increases glutathione by about 800%, SOD and catalase each by 500%. And I thought that was really interesting. And they did a University of North Carolina study on it. And they had over 40 metabolites, I think 43 metabolites went in the positive direction with this product. And again, it's just a supplement. And but it's available without prescription, so it's something to look into.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Hi, Coco. Thanks again for your presentation. I have a quick question. What do you think about functional genomics test, from Dr. Bob Miller's group, which kind of looks at gene expressions so that you would know exactly what kind of methylation problems you're having with, in terms of, like, for example, B12. So it is looking under the hood per se.
Yeah, so I think that as well as there's other companies too, that I think that's very valuable. And that's where in some cases the company will handle getting your raw data. They would send you the kit and get it, or else you may already have raw data that they can use, especially if it's more recent from 23andMe, but I think that's really important. Really zeroing in on the things that we care most about would be detox would be one of the most important, and methylation, the two top areas that I would really want to consider. I mean, a lot of people go into, the genomics looking for, do I have any gene that is the reason that I have ALS? And lots of times you come up empty, or you come up with maybe, maybe not, but it doesn't help you treat it. But what helps you treat your imbalances are especially things having to do with detoxification, genomics, and methylation.
And how about Dr. Patricia Kane's membrane stabilization diet? What do you think about it?
I have a history with that. I did her training, maybe 6 years ago or so. And Patricia Kane is a PhD who has worked with a lot of neurodegenerative conditions and traumatic brain injury and epilepsy. And I think she's really smart, and I think that a lot of my appreciation for phospholipids comes initially from her, and then some other researchers also that I really respect. But I think her membrane stabilization diet has scientific merit, and I think that if you live where there's anybody who's trained by Patricia Kane in phospholipid therapy, then I would advise you check that out. Phospholipids are lipids that are in our cell membranes. So if you think of your cell and then you think, okay, there's a membrane around your cell, the health of that cell membrane is everything. And building up the health of that cell membrane, because our cell membranes are made of lipids, they're made of fats, and they're made of these things called phospholipids. So you've probably heard of maybe phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylethanolamine, and so forth. And so her approach is about directing phospholipids therapy so that the cell membranes can repair. Don't go to someone who isn't really trained in it. The IV centers are popping up all over the place. And I think that there's some quick bucks to be made. And so I would really check the qualifications of the people who are doing it. But yes, I think it has merit. I recommend for pals to get phospholipids, and it's like not in everybody right away, but I really should do it in everybody right away. And this is a good reminder. You can also take phospholipids orally. You can get them through powder that you reconstitute in a drink. You can get it, through pills. or capsules, and then you can also get it through tablets. That's the most expensive way to go, chewable tablets. But the whole concept of phospholipid therapy, I think, is really an important and a very neglected area in ALS and neurodegeneration in general by the conventional medical people. It's just that there's not that many people trained in it.
Great, thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, thank you so much for. I don't want people to feel like we've got 8 minutes left, so I want people to feel free that they can say, unmute yourself and say anything. And if you really want to ask another question while Coco's still here, that's fine too. Whatever is going to help you guys the most. We will be shutting down in 8 minutes, though. I will actually close the meeting at that point.
Ish, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Kathy. And so I've been living with ALS for over 15 years, and I've tried, I would say, almost everything that Coco has been talking about today. And I just want to give you some kind advice, which is you got to be gentle with yourself. Don't do anything fast or aggressive. It's one step at a time. There are so many different facets here to the way that you can approach ALS. You really need to maybe spend some time in meditation with a professional and see what resonates with you. Start with one thing, get tested on one thing, approach that one thing, try it, and then move on to something else. If your B12 seems to be high and you're not feeling better, well, then move on to something else. And you can't do it all at once. It's just too overwhelming. So with a professional and with some contemplation yourself, take it one step at a time, and don't overwhelm your body by do something crazy like detoxing aggressively.
Right. And I think, LeapXX is actually, if you go to leapxx.com, I'm going to write this again, and use the Markman for 10% discount. That's a whole bunch of things, and people don't say, where do I start? I have no idea where to start. Well, Leap is actually kind of a good way to start as far as supplements go.
I want to ask
Heal, H-E-A-L, healandmeal.com is a nice way to just, if you want to give yourself, obviously organic fruits and vegetables are phenomenal. Sometimes people, just taking just one Heal in a Meal. By the way, code for Heal in a Meal is Healing ALS, and it may have to be all caps, I don't remember. But that's for a 10% discount. But those are just little things that you can do to just sort of improve things. I think Berkey water filter is another little things that you can do. So just, gentle, I like that, Kathy. Thank you so much. None of the reversals did everything all at once. They started out taking antioxidants and changing and going gluten-free and dairy-free and sugar-free, and that's kind of where they started. So take baby steps and give yourself a pat on the back for every baby step that you take.
And I would say document. When you're having a good day, document that you are having a good day. And what did you do earlier that day or the previous day that helped you with that good day? When you keep this documentation, you'll find yourself getting in a pattern. And that pattern of things that are working for you and things that are not working for you is going to become clearer and clearer the bigger your list gets. Okay? Just be aware of it.
And the other thing, too, is the chat just came up. How long do you wait for any positive change? Some of the things are not going to hurt you. You don't need to wait. For example, changing your diet, eating organic, getting rid of the toxins in your life. You don't need to wait for those. You should be doing those in conjunction with the new things. So be aware of. And
Tondalea, is it okay that you go ahead and mute a little bit before you go ahead and talk?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask.
From you, Tondalea.
I apologize.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's it. Steve Shackle from Australia said, he would wait 4 to 6 months before he even found out if something was working or not. I look at Steve Bishop. It was month 13 when he noticed a difference with Protandim. And the only reason he knew it was Protandim and not something else was that he didn't make any other changes, but he knew it was good for him. So keep taking the things that you know are good for your liver, your kidneys, your digestive system. Don't stop doing that. while you're experimenting with these other things that you may or may not notice a difference. But in general, it does take quite a while. But, you know, he's grateful that he waited the 13 months before he had his first positive reaction for something. So if you know it's good for you and you know the science is good for you, absolutely don't assume it's not. Dr. Bredesen does this with Alzheimer's. He has 39 holes that he identified as potential holes in your roof. So guess what? Until you've just because your roof is still leaking doesn't mean it's not working. It just means you've covered up these holes, but you still have these holes left.
Okay, and Tondalea, if you opened up your mic for a question, I want to give you that opportunity to go ahead and have the question. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to know the water filter system that you were just talking about.
I put it in the chat, BERKEY. It's a gravity-fed water. I'm actually going to put it in the products page. We are going to create a product.
Yes, they will be on our website. Each one of these products.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's perfect. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Coco, I worry about, like, with the detox, like if you just do a detox on your own, I think I suggested something like aloe vera and ginger, and someone told me about angostura. If I did that, because he's bed bound, I'm just worried about, like, when you detox, I know there's been questions about where do the toxins go. So is it okay to do a detox on your own, or that's not a good idea?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's gentle detox that you can do, and then there's hardcore detox. Mm-hmm. And I don't advise hardcore detox until the body is more ready for it. So I didn't hear everything. You said ginger was one of them.
Ginger, aloe vera juice, and it's something called angostura.
I don't know what that is.
It's a bitter, aromatic bitter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. None of those would be too heavy on the system.
Okay.
Aloe vera, if he'd be taking it orally.
Well, he has a feeding tube.
Okay. I would just titrate that very slowly.
Okay.
Because that can be very healing for the mucosa of the gut. But if you take too much, it could get the bowels moving too much. Yeah.
A word of caution, make sure that his detox pathways are functioning and clear. I mean, that includes everything from lipids to what? Isn't that correct, Coco? Yeah. I mean, before you start that hardcore?
With certain, yeah, but what she's mentioning is not hardcore.
Okay.
So, and then the medical medium also has they have a heavy metal detox smoothie, and again, you can add more or less to it. So you can start with the basic, and then if you're not having a reaction, you can add more. So that's a very gentle detox, gentle nutritional program. He has 6 books, and look into that as well. Those are things that you guys can do at home. Stephen Sherry did his entire protocol at home. But he did an awful lot of research about it, and he used a lot of intuition. He knew right away when something was bad for him, and he stopped taking it. And then, we got these intuitive feels for you want to increase your intuition, absolutely. That, hey, this is helping me. I just feel it.
Well, he can't talk, so he can't, that's the problem. He can't tell me if it's hurting him or not,
That's hard.
Right, but he does he have eye gaze?
He does, but he doesn't. He's not good at using it. His eyes. I think his eyes can't focus on the computer when he's trying to do that.
Okay, so you got to work on an eye signaling method for at least the basics.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Good for you.
Have you tried Heal in a Meal as a feeding tube food for him?
No.
Or
are you doing traditional things? Are you using Ensure and those other traditional things?
We have Kate Farms.
Okay, Kate Farms. Okay, Kate Farms is great.
Yes. Great. Thank you.
All right.
One tiny question. Has anybody used Citric Cleanse, and if it's any good?
We didn't get any response from that. So I do want to close up. So thank you. This is a good opportunity to share
No, it wasn't.
You guys can also, if anybody has seen Citra Cleanse, please message, put it on the chat if you've tried
I couldn't hear it. Citra what?
Citra Cleanse.
Oh, Citra Cleanse. Okay.
I haven't heard of it. So just, thank you everyone for being here, and we will see you next Sunday and with Dr. Hermanis. And great job, everyone. And Coco, thank you again for being here. And
Bye.
And Julie, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Lovely session.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you next
Okay.
week.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next week.